Winged freak. Terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Every punk in this town is scared stiff.
Hey, who is this guy?
What are they seeing up there?
Oh, my God.
Wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you?
I don't know who you think you are.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Action!
Excuse me. Could you tell me which of these guys is Bruce Wayne?
Well, I'm not sure.
Thanks anyway.
You have to recognize that when you're making a movie, that you're in the selling business from the minute the movie gestates, from the minute the movie is announced, from the minute the first comments reach the press. There's an impression about the movie. And when you have a property that's a lightning rod, like Batman, when you begin to cast the picture, everybody has an opinion because they know what that character meant to them in their youth, or as they read the comic, or when they saw the television show, and they even question whether they should make it. Well, Michael Keaton was a firestorm of activity when he was cast.
Well, Keaton was controversial at the time because everybody thought, Michael Keaton, that means the picture is becoming a comedy. Of course, Tim had just done Beetlejuice with Michael Keaton, in which he was spectacular, but it's not the sort of thing that you would necessarily look at and say, oh, look, here's this guy, you know, is an incredible physical comedian. It's not you instantly think Batman.
At first I thought it was a joke, and I laughed and said, yeah, Mr. Mom is Batman. That's very funny. When they explained that everybody was serious about this, my instantaneous response was like every fanboy. I was shocked. I said, oh my God, this can't become a campy Batman again.
I remember that this was so newsworthy that the front page of the Wall Street Journal, of all places, had an article about what was wrong with us for choosing Michael Keaton to be Batman. You can't buy that kind of publicity.
On the front page in the left column, to show you the level of celebrity it reached, said, what a ridiculous choice. This is the silliest choice. This is ridiculous. That's not where the character lies. Now, this is a major financial paper, an institution, talking about a creative enterprise. So the good news is they're talking about the creative enterprise. The bad news is they're creating questions in the part of the management. Oh my God, what are these folks doing who are managing our asset and our money? Us. So you always have that yin and the yang. You know, you get the noise, but you also get the light.
It was kind of a shock to some people when we cast Michael Keaton, and I did hear filtering back from America that, oh my God, you know, this is going to be a disaster. It's going to be like the TV show and blah, 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 and they're just going to camp it up and do the. But, you know, we knew that wasn't the case. You know, I thought he was absolutely right for it.
Tim saw something in Michael's eyes. They were very alive and interesting, and a lot of the time he was wearing a mask or a cowl, and he needed what came from his eyes. I had cast Michael before that in a picture called Clean and Sober, and I knew he was a fine actor, but the eyes got him the job.
It's like with Michael, you look at him and he's just got those eyes and he looks crazy and he looks just like, but he also doesn't look like a superhero. It's like he looks like a guy who would need to dress up like a bat for effect.
The comfort zone was Tim Burton. I knew I at least, could put my trust in someone, at least to some degree, even though it was a huge challenge to him and a risk to him too. It doesn't seem like that probably, but it was just a difficult movie to do and a big thing to pull off. When he called me and said, I'm doing Batman and I'd like to do it, had it not been him, I wouldn't have even read the thing. But I figured if it's coming from him, this is worth reading. And then I knew immediately who this guy was. I just knew what I would have done. The risk came in because of the scale of this thing. But if this character doesn't work, this movie doesn't work. Now, I kind of knew that, but I didn't want to think about that, or I was a dead man.
What Michael Keaton captured was the traumatized Bruce Wayne, the neurotic Bruce Wayne, the Bruce Wayne who you could believe could at night put on a suit and go out and fight crime.
Tim indicated, I don't exactly know how to put a serious actor into a Batman costume without getting inadvertent laughs from the audience. He said, but he did know that with Michael Keaton, they could create a portrayal of this driven and consumed Bruce Wayne, and audiences would go, yeah, he could do this, he would do that, and thus the suspension of disbelief.
Michael Keaton has a quality, when I watch him as a performer or as a personality, and even working with him when I was watching him, he has three qualities. There's a comic quality, there's a vulnerability, but there's also something underneath. You feel that there's something underneath going on. There's a mystery there.
Michael was phenomenal. I adored him as Batman, and I know there had been some controversy, and some people they were very reserved about that choice at first, and I thought I got it immediately. And there was something about Michael that I could just see as an orphaned child. I bought it. I bought it from day one.
Being a big fan of irony, I just think it's great from sitting back and looking at it all. I just think this is great fun, but no real vindication. I mean, it wasn't all that severe. Just people saying except for the hundreds of thousands of people who were protesting in the streets, I guess. And when they hung me in effigy, that was a little, for me, harsh.
Hello, Vinny. It's your Uncle Bingo. Time to pay the check.
There was a conversation about who should play the Joker. And there were, as with Batman, there were names, Robin Williams, so many actors wanted to be the Joker that everyone had to be dealt with appropriately.
Jack Nicholson as the Joker, it's like you don't even have to be a casting director. Nobody even have to say anything. That was just everybody's first choice, because he is the Joker. There's just no question about it. The fear is almost more like he's almost too perfect, but he's so great that he even transcends that. He even goes beyond your expectations just because he's so good.
We had known Jack Nicholson for a while, and the idea was, would Jack play a role like that? This is not the kind of film Jack Nicholson played in. This is the guy from The Last Detail and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We're talking about a force of nature, an acting force of nature.
Jack was never one to just work with a director. There was no actor alive who respects a filmmaker more once he decides to do it. But he has to decide to do it. So Tim had to convince Jack that he was right.
And I remember we went up to Aspen, and Jack says, let's go riding. He's going to meet Tim Burton. And Tim says, I don't ride. And I said to him, you do today, And there's a picture of him on the horse with Jack. And Jack's a good rider, really good rider. And Tim Burton looks like he discovered God on that horse.
I was terrified, and it's like, I'm out with Peter Guber and Jack Nicholson on horseback, up in Aspen. I'm going, I didn't realize this was horseback riding was part of my job description, but it was it was a surreal moment.
He was not a happy camper, but he did it, and Jack committed to the project. I don't know because of the horse riding, but I think that they had a good bonding there, and that moved the project yet further ahead.
Once somebody like him gets involved, it just raises the bar of everything else, and just creates a buzz about it, an excitement that just permeates everything, really.
I was afraid because of my feel of the television series and the way movies tend to be done and talked about. I didn't want this to go through the normal, let's brighten it up for the kids, you know what I mean? I thought this was a very strong, in every way, transitional movie about the genre and really why they wanted me in there. You know, in other words, on a superficial level at that moment, it gave it, oh, this is not just another cartoon movie.
It changed the nature of the comic framework into a film, from a movie into a film with the inclusion of Jack Nicholson. There was something to be discovered there by the critics and by the media, because they would find it intriguing that Jack wanted to do that.
Part of the thinking in getting Nicholson was really similar going back to the Marlon Brando concept in the first Superman picture. You get such a great deal of respectability for the picture, for what you're trying to do, that not only does that help bring audiences in from young to old, but it also makes it very attractive to other major stars to want to become the next Batman villain, to follow in the footsteps of Jack Nicholson.
When Jack entered the movie, the balance of the movie started to shift a little bit. So you wanted to, play to your strengths. The Joker became a little bit more than he actually was in the earlier drafts, which is only smart. You make the changes. It's no different than a sports team making the adjustments at halftime or something like that.
To this day, I always took this performance more seriously than probably anybody in the world, because I looked at it that way. My early experience told me from working for an audience full of children, the more you scare them, the more they like it. The worse you are, the better. Because that was my response to the Joker. I mean, after all, this is a hateful occurrence, this man. And if you looked at it literally, every kid loves this guy, I believe. And I particularly love just the name, Joker. It's fantastic.
The studio felt the marquee of Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson changed the nature of the film. And he recognized that. And they negotiated a very strong deal, especially in the back end, because it was a short schedule. It turned out not to be a short schedule, though. And because of his presence, and because of his performance, and because of the weight of his existence, really, he made an incredible, indelible imprint on that genre and on that film, and made a lot of money, and deservedly so.
Hi, I'm Vicki Vale.
Vicki Vale, yeah, photographer, Vogue, Cosmo, yeah. Listen, if you want me to pose nude, you're gonna need a long lens. Vicki Vale was originally Sean Young. It wasn't Kim Basinger. Kim had to come flying at the last second.
Sean Young was there. She was there for 4 or 5 weeks of pre-production, and Sean wanted to go and practice her horse riding, but she fell off, and we were about a week away from shooting.
Falling off that horse was something that just kind of, I couldn't hang on. I just couldn't hang on, and there's kind of a poetic symbolism about that. It's like, in a way, I look back at that particular time in my life and I go, wow, I wish I'd been able to hang on to that horse. I wish I'd been able to do that, because then the turning point in my particular career, I would have been able to stay on the film. I would have been in a big box office hit. I would have been able to go on to other big box office hits. I would have been, and then that kind of domino effect would have occurred in my career. So that was the turning point in my career where that didn't happen.
Unfortunately, Sean Young had to be replaced, and at the time it was quite a panic, if you like, to recast her.
John Peters, myself, Tim Burton huddled on the phone with Terry Semel at the studio, talked about several actresses. Kim was right at the top of the list.
Everyone got excited about Kim Basinger, and I think I had to be the one with Barbara Kalish faxing the script to Los Angeles all night, every page. This was in the 80s, so the fax thing was different.
I think it was much more a case of who is available tomorrow, who can fly to London tomorrow night, who is capable of doing this part. There was a lot of who's available, and it very quickly, there was you only got 3 or 4 people that could actually catch a plane in 2 days' time and come to England for 3 or 4 months, 5 months to make a movie and be somebody who they could put up on a marquee and say, you know, this is Vicky Vale. And that's how Kim got it.
They called me and I found myself on a plane over to London. That's actually how quick it happened. I had no time to think. I just found myself walking onto a set. And I remember the first day I walked on this set, I said, this is not a movie. This is an experience. This is a phenomenon. This is just, I just knew in my heart this was going to be far more than just your average movie.
Kim luckily came in last minute, you know, and, you know, it was kind of, I think probably a strange circumstance for her because she's kind of like last minute thrown into this sort of boys club, you know, all these guys, you know, where's the girl, you know, and but she was great. I think she gave a really solid, I mean, she, you know, with this kind of material, somebody like that, her and Michael and the other actors that give it a grounding, you know, you're taking this sort of fantastic material, but trying to find a reality in it. And she was always trying to, you know, just find that real strong, simple reality. And I think it helps this kind of a film quite a lot.
It was like Alice in Wonderland. I mean, it really was. I didn't know what to think of it. I really didn't know at first. And I was submerged in just a small fraction of it with the car and, of course, Michael and his outfit. It was just wow. It really was wow.
And what number are we starting with? Is it going to be 1 week, 2 weeks, a year, 6 months?
We're going to do it in 5 days.
Any officer in this city that is proved to have done anything wrong is going to be out so fast he will not know what hit him.
The things that keep you going in a shoot are the actors and the crew and what you're seeing, you know, and therefore that's really it. And I remember Pat Hingle, Billy D. Williams, Michael Goff. I mean, everybody that we got in there are real, you know, great actors and just up the level of what the project was.
I like working with him because he leaves it, he gives you the problem, he explains how it works and says, now play with it. He does leave a lot to you, and that's exciting, and encourages you to go in that direction, you know?
Tim doesn't live here on the ground with the rest of it. He lives up there somewhere on a cloud somewhere. I mean, his whole thinking, you know, he's brilliant, but he's just not one of us Earth people.
He was so tuned in on the take, you know, on the whole thing. Tim. I mean, this is Tim's creation. I mean, John Peters, got to give him credit to Peter and John for putting it together and staying with it for a long period of time, because they went through a lot of drafts. But, you know, it's Tim. I mean, I have to say Tim.
So those are the forces that were at work. Each one helped the other. And that was what you wanted to try to have happen. And I think the chemistry that Tim and the studio and ourselves brought to it was as much by the movie god as it was by our own divining and skill powers. I mean, the movie god plays a role in it. It's like you have to work real hard, get the right thing, and get a little lucky.
That's all we need. Long one there. Yeah, wonderful.
Okay, let's go right away.
saying, like, it's what you're suggesting is an interesting thing, because you don't want it to look like you want it to look like you're wounded, but you're still going for it. Do you know what I mean?
At the time, people tend to forget Batman was the biggest movie of all time, most expensive movie. And there was a lot of people's careers riding on this thing, especially at the Warner Brothers end. A lot of money involved in this thing. The set at Pinewood Studios was spectacular. There was nothing like Gotham City.
I can't quite explain why movies like this are difficult to keep track of, except to say they are enormous. And I'm amazed at Tim and everyone else who worked on it. I mean, everyone else who worked on it, because everyone has to kind of keep up with it.
One of the things I think I had about this movie is I knew how big it was going to be. You know, I knew this. For instance, they had a good feeling about it, but in the area which I'm involved in, I don't care, but I mean, it also cost me some dough. They were totally unprepared for the level of the success of the movie.
It was Tim's vision. It was his eye. You know, once you bought that eye. The question was, how much does it cost, and where can you make it less expensive? Not cheap, less expensive, or as inexpensively or as controlled as possible. And that brought us to England to do that.
It was a big movie, and there wasn't really the space at Warner's to do it, so there wasn't a lot going on in England. So Pinewood Studios seemed like a really prime candidate because it had the space and it had a backlot area where you could build out on, which was nice. And it was, had the artists and talented people to make a project like that go. And for me, it's a way of sort of being away from all of the business side of it, trying to focus on the movie, which was important and good, and kind of away from all of the hype that was back in America about it. Because when you're making a movie, you don't like get caught up in all that because you have to make it. So I think it turned out the right place to do it.
I think a lot of it, I'm sure, was Anton first, who was an incredible, dark, interesting character. If you looked at Anton, he could have played a part in Batman very easily, well, as could Tim Burton. So you had these two guys, and you had Roger Pratt, who's a wonderful photographer. I guess really kind of balancing the two out a little bit, because Anton would go off and crazy ideas that sometimes weren't possible. His team were bringing back a bit. Tim had really wonderful ideas. He knew exactly the look he wanted.
It was a tough shoot during the winter of '88, December, long nights. We used to be filming up on the Gotham streets, and you'd start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was already dark in England, and you'd film right through till 5 or 6 in the morning. It was still dark. You never saw daylight, and it went on for weeks on end.
It was a difficult shoot because it was, for the entire shoot, it was a 6-day shoot. But I don't think I'd ever do it again because I found it quite counterproductive. I mean, if you're shooting a movie, you're basically working every day anyway. So if you're shooting 6 days, though, you don't have really any time to prepare for the next week. So I kind of felt like a fighter in the middle of a fight who didn't have time to take a break, just take a step back. So it was a difficult shoot that way, and it was in the winter at night. So like for 3 months, I didn't think I saw daylight at all.
Once we got in production, the astounding thing to me about Tim was and is the unshakable central self-confidence and lack of fear that he has. When I watched him, this was part of the scuttlebutt. His Batman was the biggest production in history in England in terms of production costs and so forth and so on. And watching him, and you see this, I'm pretty low-key, you'd see it on me. You don't see pressure on this kid. And I'm thinking, geez, this guy's in his early 20s. He's got the biggest budget in history. It's not even a factor. He just goes about his business and does it.
Being relatively new to, the first big movie, I was very grateful for Jack's support because, he told me, he just said, don't let them, you just get what you need, and don't let them get to you and that kind of thing. Just was really cool that way and helping me get through the process.